Brandon Keller stands at the microphone in the Manhattan ballroom. Crystal chandeliers glittering above him. 700 guests watching. He's just made a joke about his first wife. Laughter ripples through the crowd, uncomfortable but complicit. At a table near the kitchen doors, Aria sits perfectly still, cheeks burning, every eye in the room now on her. She's holding a small envelope. He invited her here to humiliate her, to prove she'd lost the greatest prize of her life. She came to destroy him. This isn't just a wedding. This is an execution. And in the next 10 minutes, a billionaire who erased a woman who built him will learn that some people refuse to stay erased. If you ever watch someone take credit for your work, steal your future, and walk away laughing, this story is for you. Hit subscribe, because what happens next is the most satisfying revenge you'll ever witness. Before Brandon Keller's name was on stadiums and hospital wings, before the Forbes profiles and White House dinners, there was Aria, young, ambitious, working double shifts as a waitress while taking night classes in business management. She had dreams of her own, not of being someone's wife, but of building something that mattered. She met Brandon at a networking event she could barely afford to attend. He was charismatic, full of ideas, completely broke. He sketched real estate concepts on cocktail napkins and talked about empire building like it was inevitable. Most people smiled politely and walked away. Aria stayed. What started as attraction became partnership. They were a team, his vision, her execution, her business acumen, his charm. But more than that, they were building something together. At least, that's what she thought. The sacrifices came naturally at first. Brandon needed capital, but banks wouldn't touch him. Aria co-signed the loans, used her credit when his was non-existent. Her paycheck funded the prototype deals while he networked with investors who wouldn't give him money but might give him time. 16-hour days. Her working the numbers while he worked the room. Those napkin sketches becoming actual proposals. Her notes in the margins. Her calculations making the dreams possible. Have you ever believed in someone so completely that you bet your entire future on them? That's what Aria did. The early wins came. First property acquired. First development project approved. Aria's role was silent partner by choice. She thought they were building their future. Why did it matter whose name was on the paperwork when they were in it together? But when the money started flowing, something shifted. Brandon entered new circles, met new people, started caring about image in ways he never had before. Country clubs, charity galas, rooms full of old money and older names. And Aria didn't fit the picture anymore. Not polished enough, not connected enough, not from the right families or the right schools. She was a reminder of where he'd come from, and Brandon was obsessed with where he was going. The conversation came on a Tuesday night in their apartment. 3 years into business, 6 years into their marriage. I need someone who matches where I'm going, not where I've been. No apology, no gratitude. Just a cold calculation that she was now a liability to the image he wanted to project. The divorce was swift and strategic. His lawyers versus Aria with no resources left. She'd spent everything building his empire. The settlement was insultingly small. And worse than the money was the erasure. Her name removed from company records. Her contributions rewritten as loans she'd been repaid for. Her role reduced to supportive spouse in the narrative he was already crafting. She walked away with ruined credit, no equity in what they'd built, and no acknowledgement that she'd built anything at all. Brandon got the empire. Aria got erased. Over the next 5 years, Brandon Keller became everything he dreamed of. The empire exploded. Hotels in 3 countries. Stadiums in 2 cities. A children's hospital wing with his name in gold letters. Philanthropist, visionary, self-made billionaire. Forbes profile. The man who built an empire on calculated risk. Wall Street Journal feature. Brandon Keller's genius instinct for development. Invitations to speak at Harvard Business School about entrepreneurship. The story he told was seamless. Pulled himself up by his bootstraps. Made calculated risks when others played it safe. Trusted his vision when everyone doubted. No mention of Aria. Ever. When journalists asked about his first marriage, and they rarely did, his answer was practiced. an early relationship. We wanted different things. I was focused on building something. She wanted stability. The narrative was clear. Arya was a woman who couldn't handle his success. The small-minded partner who held him back until he was strong enough to break free. Meanwhile, Arya was rebuilding from nothing. Credit destroyed. Professional reputation tainted by his whisper campaigns. He made sure mutual contacts knew she was difficult, bitter, someone who couldn't let go. She moved to a different city, started over in a different industry, worked her way back up with the kind of grinding determination that had built Brandon's empire in the first place. And she watched. From a distance, through news articles and business journals, she watched Brandon accept awards for work she'd helped create, watched him quoted in magazines using her strategies, repackaged as his genius, watched him at charity galas funded by the empire they'd started. The injustice wasn't just personal. It was systemic. She'd become invisible. One more woman whose contributions got credited to the man who took her work. But Arya wasn't just surviving. She was documenting. Quietly, methodically, she'd kept everything. Contracts with her signature. Emails discussing strategy, showing whose ideas became whose projects. Bank transfer records proving her credit had propped up his deals. Loan documents where she was the primary borrower, him the beneficiary. Text messages from those early days. Proof of partnership, not employment. She knew one day Brandon would go too far. His ego wouldn't let him stay quiet. He'd need to prove he'd won. She just had to wait for the right moment. That moment came when Brandon announced his engagement to Madison Whitmore, 22 years old, old money family, socialite, everything Arya wasn't, everything Brandon now wanted the world to believe he deserved. The wedding announcement made headlines. Historic Manhattan Hotel, celebrity guest list, 7-figure floral budget, exclusive coverage in 3 magazines. And then the invitation arrived at Arya's door. Heavy cardstock, gold embossing, and a handwritten note in Brandon's distinctive scrawl. Hope you can make it. Would love for you to see how things turned out. Arya stood in her apartment, holding the invitation, hands shaking, not from fear, from rage. Her friends were horrified. Don't go. He's trying to humiliate you. Her sister. He wants you in the back row wearing something cheap while cameras capture his perfect new beginning. Don't give him the satisfaction. Her mentor. This is a power play. He's putting you on display. Walk away. The tabloids were already speculating. Billionaire invites ex-wife to wedding. Classy gesture or ultimate cruelty? Brandon's intention was obvious to everyone. He wanted to parade his victory. Show Arya what she'd lost. Prove to the world and to himself that he'd made the right choice. The message was clear. You were never good enough, and now everyone will see it. Arya made her decision. Accept the invitation. Not out of weakness. Out of strategy. She'd spent 5 years waiting for Brandon to feel untouchable. And this wedding, this public spectacle, this moment of maximum arrogance was perfect. She began her preparation. Organized documents. Made copies. Planned her approach down to the minute. The key decision, who to give the evidence to. She researched the guest list carefully and found her mark. Marcus Chun, investigative journalist, known for exposing financial fraud and corporate malfeasance. Beloved by business ethics watchdogs. Hated by people with something to hide. Arya reached out anonymously. Told him to attend the wedding. Promised a story worth his time. What would you do in Arya's position? Would you go? Would you stay silent? Drop a comment. Because what she does next takes courage most of us can't imagine. The day arrived. Manhattan buzzed with wedding preparations. Florists, photographers, security details coordinating movements like a military operation. Arya got ready alone. Simple navy dress. Minimal makeup. Hair pinned back in a neat bun. No designer gown to compete with the bride. No dramatic jewelry to draw attention. She dressed to disappear into the background because she wanted Brandon to feel safe, comfortable, confident enough to do exactly what she knew he couldn't resist doing. She wanted him to show everyone exactly who he was. The venue was everything money could buy. Historic Manhattan Hotel. Crystal chandeliers dripping light like rain. Imported flowers in arrangements taller than most guests. Ice sculptures. Champagne towers. String quartet playing classical pieces nobody recognized, but everyone appreciated. The guest list read like a Forbes 400 reunion. Billionaires, celebrities, politicians, old money aristocrats who considered new money vulgar but made exceptions for amounts this large. Arya arrived deliberately late, slipped through the entrance during the cocktail hour, found her assigned table near the kitchen doors, exactly where Brandon wanted her, visible but marginalized, close enough to see everything, far enough to be dismissed. The ceremony was lavish and performative. The bride wore a dress that cost more than Arya's annual salary. Brandon's vows talk about finally finding the one, and knowing what real partnership means. Arya sat perfectly still, face neutral, holding her small envelope. The reception began. Speeches, toasts, champagne flowing like water. Brandon's business partner praising his vision. The bride's father welcoming him to the family. Then Brandon took the microphone for his special speech. He thanked guests, told the story of his success, how he built everything from nothing, how he trusted his instincts when everyone doubted, how he'd never let failure define him. Then his eyes landed on Arya. The smile that crossed his face was predatory, satisfied, the look of a man about to enjoy something he'd been anticipating. Actually, there's someone here tonight I need to acknowledge. The room quieted, sensing something. My first wife, Arya, is here. Give her a wave, Arya. A spotlight swung to her table. Cameras turned. Every eye in a room of 700 people locked onto her. Her cheeks burned. Her stomach dropped. The public humiliation was beginning exactly as he'd planned. Brandon continued, voice smooth and practiced. I want to thank her, actually. She taught me an important lesson early on. He paused for effect. Guests leaned forward. She taught me the difference between someone who can dream with you and someone who can build with you. Laughter rippled through the crowd, uncomfortable at first, but growing. The guests didn't know the full story, but they understood the implication. Brandon's smile widened. We all make mistakes when we're young, right? The key is learning when to trade up. The laughter grew louder, more confident. The bride giggled behind her hand. Guests whispered to each other, entertained by the audacity. So thank you, Arya, for being my practice round. I got it right this time. The room erupted. Applause, laughter, the sound of social victory. Brandon beaming, soaking in the approval. Microphone still in hand, like a trophy. And that's when Arya stood up. Every eye remained on her. The laughter died. Confusion spread like ripples across the room. She walked toward him, not hurried, not hesitant, calm, deliberate, purposeful, each step measured, each step watched by 700 people and a dozen cameras. She reached the center of the room, extended her hand. Brandon, confused but still smug, handed her the microphone. Arya stood center room, microphone in hand, small envelope visible to everyone watching. Her voice was steady, quiet enough that everyone had to stop breathing to hear it. Thank you for that introduction, Brandon. And thank you for the invitation. She opened the envelope, multiple documents inside, carefully organized. I came tonight because you wanted to remind me of what I lost. A pause. The room utterly silent now. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving. I'm here to remind you of what you stole. She held up the first document, turning it so cameras could see. This is the co-sign loan from 2015, the one that funded your first development deal in Brooklyn. She showed it to the crowd. Camera phones rising across the room. The one you told Forbes you secured yourself with calculated risk and vision. She pointed to a signature line. My name is right here. Primary borrower. My credit. My liability. My risk. Next document. These are emails from 2016. You're asking me to handle investor meetings while you focused on vision. She read a line directly. Arya, can you handle more meeting? You're better with numbers. I'll take credit when it closes. Nervous laughter in the room now, but different, uncomfortable. The kind that happens when people realize they're watching something they shouldn't be seeing. More documents. Bank transfers showing her salary funding his operations for 2 years. Text messages discussing strategy, her ideas, his execution, his name on the final pitch. Contracts where she'd been listed as partner, then mysteriously amended after the divorce to read consulting agreement. For 5 years, I watched you tell the world you were self-made. Her voice harder now. You stood on stages and accepted award for work I helped build. You rewrote our history, erased me from company records, called me bitter when I asked for what I was owed. You ruined my credit to protect yours. You buried my contributions to elevate your myth. Brandon's face had gone white. Panicked, his lawyers were standing, trying to approach. But security didn't know whose orders to follow. But Arya wasn't finished. Tonight, you invited me here to humiliate me, to show everyone I wasn't good enough for the empire you built. She walked toward Marcus Chun, the journalist, who was already recording every word, handed him the full packet of documents. I came to show everyone who you really are. If this moment doesn't give you chills, I don't know what will. Hit that like button if you're Team Arya. She returned to center. One final statement. This was what she'd come for. You invited me here to remind me of what I lost. She paused, made eye contact with Brandon across the silent room. I came to remind you of what you stole. Arya placed a microphone on the table. The sound of it hitting the surface echoed in the silence. She turned her back on the chandeliers, on the cameras, on the gasping, whispering crowd, and she walked toward the exit, head high, shoulders back, not rushing, not hiding. The room remained frozen. No one spoke. No one moved. The string quartet had stopped playing. Waiters stood with trays, suspended mid-service. Then chaos erupted, whispers exploding into conversations. Phones already uploading videos. Journalists calling editors. Brandon's lawyers swarming, trying to contain what couldn't be contained. The bride in tears, her mascara running, her father demanding answers with a red face and shaking hands. Business partners at their tables suddenly reassessing everything they thought they knew. The donors who'd funded the hospital wing conferring in corners with worried expressions. Marcus Chun was already texting his newsroom. We got a story. Major story. Front page. By the time Arya reached her car, the video was spreading. Within an hour, trending on every platform. Not the wedding dress. Not the celebrity guests. Not the 7-figure flowers. The billionaire groom exposed by the ex-wife he tried to humiliate. Headlines forming in real time. Brandon Keller's empire built on stolen credit. Wedding disruption reveals Billionaire's hidden partner. The woman behind the Billionaire and how he erased her. By morning, sponsors pulling out. Board members calling emergency meetings. Investigation launched into company records and financial history. The bride's family quietly distancing themselves, their lawyers examining prenuptial agreements. Brandon's carefully constructed image crumbling in real time. Every interview he'd ever given now being re-examined. Every claim of being self-made now suspicious. Arya sat in her apartment, phone off, drinking tea. Not celebrating, not triumphant, just processing. She didn't do this for fame or fortune. She didn't do it for revenge in the petty sense. She did it because the erasure had to end. Because the truth deserved to be heard after 5 years of lies. Because some injustices are too big to carry silently. And because Brandon Keller had made the fatal mistake of thinking she'd stay erased. Of believing that humiliation would keep her silent. Of forgetting that the woman who'd helped build an empire knew exactly where all the foundations were buried. Arya's story is about more than one woman's revenge on one terrible man. It's about every woman whose contributions get erased. Every partner whose work gets credited to someone else. Every builder who gets written out of the success story they helped create. It's about the people who sacrifice everything for someone else's dream, only to be rebranded as bitter or jealous when they dare ask for acknowledgement. The lesson here isn't complicated. Documentation is power. When someone tries to erase you, evidence is your voice. Arya spent 5 years not drowning in bitterness, but preparing with purpose. She knew Brandon's ego would eventually create the perfect opportunity. She just had to be ready when it came. And when it came, she was... The deeper truth is that some people will always take credit, will always rewrite history to center themselves, will always demand gratitude for what they stole. But erasure only works if the erased stays silent. Aria's final sentence echoes because it matters. You invited me here to remind me of what I lost. I came to remind you of what you stole. That distinction is everything. Loss implies misfortune, bad luck, circumstances beyond control. Theft implies crime, intention, someone making a choice to take what wasn't theirs. Aria refused to accept his narrative, refused to let her story be told by the person who benefited from burying it. Brandon Keller wanted a wedding that proved he'd won everything. He got a reckoning that proved he'd lied about everything. The cameras he invited to capture his triumph captured his downfall instead. The guests he assembled to witness his victory witnessed his exposure. The microphone he used to humiliate became the instrument of his destruction. Sometimes justice isn't about the courts or the lawyers. Sometimes it's about standing in a room full of people who believe a lie and calmly, methodically, showing them the truth. Aria walked out of that ballroom with nothing but the clothes on her back and an empty envelope, but she walked out with her story finally told, her contributions finally acknowledged, her erasure finally ended, and that was worth every second of those 5 long years. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Earthly Tales for more stories about people who refuse to stay silent, who fight back against injustice, who reclaim what was stolen. And remember, the people who try to erase you are banking on your silence, on your fear, on your willingness to accept the narrative they write. Don't give it to them. Document everything. Wait for the right moment. And when it comes, stand up and tell your truth, because some stories are too important to stay buried, and some people are too powerful to stay erased.